Good evening, gentle traveler. Tonight, let us step together into the long, shadowed roads of a world that once bustled with life, now grown eerily still. The lights of cities flicker out one by one. The night air hums with the lonely echoes of empty highways, and somewhere beyond the horizon, a soft wind carries the scent of dreams. That whisper of hope, of terror, of the fragile courage that flickers like a candle in the dark. This is The Stand, a grand, sprawling, dark fantasy penned by Stephen King. Tale of endings and beginnings, of the quiet moments that hold more weight than thunderous battles, struggle between light and shadow, all played out across the wide, abandoned stretches of America. The quiet Texan, whose immunity makes him both the symbol of hope and a hunted man. Franny Goldsmith, a young woman carrying more than just her own future. And deserted shopping malls, where time itself seems to hold its breath. It's a book about plagues and power, but also about humanity, about small kindnesses shared in the dark, and quiet acts of heroism when no one is watching. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest battles are not fought with swords or guns, but with choices made in lonely places. And so, tonight, as you settle under your blankets, let us travel softly through this epic together, chapter by chapter, like old friends sitting by a crackling fire, whispering stories into the quiet night. Deep in the Mojave Desert, within a hidden government laboratory known as Project Blue, men in white suits tend to their work in sterile, humming rooms. Campion sees death creeping toward him, in the blinking lights and the coughing of his coworkers. In those first days, the world still seems normal. Radio music plays softly, gas stations glow with neon, truckers sip coffee in roadside diners. His vehicle smashes into the pumps of a sleepy gas station, where a few locals stand beneath the wide, hot sky. Campion tumbles out, a man who has outrun the devil only to collapse at its feet. A quiet, solid Texan, with the steady patience of someone who's lived a hard but honest life. Men in suits who smell of fear and authority cordon off the town. Helicopters sweep the skies, casting long shadows over quiet streets. The army descends like a shroud, wrapping the town in secrecy. Soldiers speak in clipped, urgent voices. Doctors in protective suits slip in and out of makeshift hospitals as more and more townsfolk collapse with the same hacking cough, the same high fever, the same glassy eyes. Hop, who tries to keep his little gas station running even as the sky seems to darken, and the nameless EMTs who carry death unknown in their hands. King shows us the tender humanity of small towns, even as he hints at the vast, dark wave rolling across the world, and the unstoppable spread of a sickness too small to see, setting the stage for a story where hope and horror will dance in the shadows of a silent, empty world. Each cough is a drumbeat in the funeral march of a civilization that doses tea. Yet no, it is dying. But rumors ripple through our net. Some say it's food poisoning. Others whisper about chemical spills or military accidents. No one says the word plague, but it sits heavy in every breath, in every phone call to a distant loved one. The army's assurances sound hollow. Quiet prayers begin at kitchen tables. The smell of antiseptic fills the air. His wife and child are already dead in the car. He falls ill like the rest, but when others fade, he holds on. The virus slips into buses, airplanes, roadside diners, hotel lobbies. Travelers carry it unknowingly to every corner of America. The president urges calm, but the sickness spreads faster than any words can contain. Within hours, cities feel the first tremors of fear. Within days, whole neighborhoods fall silent. When doctors in full gear peer at him through thick glass, they see a man who will not die. Stu's stubborn survival becomes both a hope and a threat. He is whisked away under the cover of night to a secret government facility, first in Atlanta, then in Vermont. His immune system, a mystery scientists believe, could be humanity's last chance. The gas station owner, Hop, rushes to help. His customers, including a quiet man named Stuart Redman, gather around the wreckage. None realize the silent enemy is already among them. Radios begin to falter. Television screens go black. Roads clog with cars that will never reach their destinations. But the virus has already begun its dark bloom inside him. His breath, his touch, his mere presence becomes a death sentence. And so, the end of the world slips quietly into America, wearing the face of an ordinary family on an ordinary road trip. Without a plan, only a desperate urge to flee, he rushes to his car, gathers his wife and baby daughter, and drives east through the desert night. Headlights slicing through blackness like thin blades. EMTs lift Campion's limp body, not knowing they carry more than a dying man. In their faces, we see a microcosm of every small kindness humans offer each other in times of trouble. How natural it feels to help, to comfort, to care. And yet, every breath shared here is another thread unraveled from the fabric of the world. Behind them, the lab grows still. Inside, everyone falls silent, succumbing to a virus that does not forgive mistakes. Their eyes are watchful but tired, their routines so familiar that danger feels distant until the alarms ring out, shrill and sudden. A containment breach, a crack in the armor, meant to keep their experiments from the world. Yet within this silence blooms a fragile new society. 2 cities rising from the ashes, one in Boulder, Colorado. The world is vast, and tonight we will walk its empty roads in the company of souls who still dare to dream, even as the stars above seem to flicker with uncertainty, where kindness and cooperation flicker to life under Mother Abigail's guidance. The other in Las Vegas, Nevada, where Randall Flock's dark charisma draws the bitter, the broken, and the cruel into a twisted vision of order. The threads of these 2 worlds will weave together as fate, faith, and fear guide the survivors toward an inevitable clash, a stand that will decide not just who lives, but what kind of world will be born from the root. Larry Underwood, a rising pop star who must learn what it truly means to be a man. Nick Andros, the deaf mute whose silence speaks volumes. And Harold Lauder, a boy who wants so desperately to be seen, and who finds that darkness sometimes notices those who feel invisible. You will stand at their shoulders, hearing their thoughts, feeling the thud of their hearts, sensing the strange comfort of their quiet triumphs, and the gentle ache of their losses. Invisible and merciless, it sweeps across the globe like a silent storm, leaving nearly everyone dead in its wake. In the hollow spaces left behind, those who survive begin to drift, pulled by mysterious dreams. Some beckoned by the warm light of a century-old woman known as Mother Abigail. Others lured by the cold smile of Randall Flagg, the dark man walking the empty roads. This is a story of choices, of paths taken and forsaken, of frailty and strength. It is an American epic, woven with the same grand ambition as Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but set not in a fantasy kingdom, but in the gas stations, motels, and lonely fields of a plague-stricken America. First, published in 1978, and then lovingly restored to its full, uncut glory in 1990. The Stand invites us into a world where a single mistake unleashes an unstoppable tide of death, and from the ruins, scattered souls must choose which side of the eternal line they will stand on. At its heart, The Stand tells of a superfluous strain of weaponized influenza nicknamed Captain Trips, accidentally released from a military lab tucked deep in the Mojave Desert. Here you will meet people whose names might linger with you like half-remembered dreams. Stuart Redmond, the world of The Stand, is a place of haunted cornfields, rusting cars left where they ran out of gas. In the pages of The Stand, King offers a mirror to our deepest fears and our most stubborn hopes. Breathe deeply. Feel the hush settle around you. Welcome to The Stand. Our journey begins now. The story begins, not with a roar, but with a quiet, deadly slipper moment, when a gate meant to protect humanity fails, and a single breath becomes the herald of the end. The doors burst open for one man, Charles Campion, a security guard whose reflexes are sharper than his sense of duty. As Campion speeds away, the tiny invader Captain Trips rides with him. After days of flight, fevered and half-blind, Campion's car swerves off the road, near the small town of Arnett, Texas. The ambulance arrives, sirens wailing, In these opening moments, Stephen King invites us to meet a handful of ordinary people whose fates will ripple outward. Stu Redmond, meanwhile, as word of the crash and Campion's odd illness spreads, black government cars roll into Arnett. A sense of eerie stillness takes root. Radios squawk with emergency bulletins. Local DJs try to soothe growing unease with familiar songs. As the town sickens, Stu Redmond stands out. And yet, as days turn to nights in these stark white medical centers, Captain Trips spreads beyond Arnett. The horror of Captain Trips is not just its lethality, but its silence. It moves invisibly, faster than any army, crossing borders, oceans, and continents, before most realize what has happened. In these first 3 chapters, the tone is set with a kind of hushed inevitability. The ordinary becomes ominous. The comforting patterns of daily life unravel grain by grain, and so the world begins to end not with explosions or grand battles, but with a man's desperate flight, a quiet crash. The sickness moves with a quiet certainty of nightfall. After the first cracks in Arnett, Texas, Captain Trips drifts outward, lacing itself into the breath of strangers who never knew each other, but now share the same deadly fate. These chapters show the first true spread, like dark ink blooming in clear water, and the subtle dread that begins to settle over the country. In living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms, people wake with a scratchy throat or a dull ache in their joints. They dismiss it at first. Summer cold, perhaps. A soldier stationed at a base in California coughs violently, then staggers out of formation as his sergeant watches helplessly. The man in the next room who cracked jokes the night before is silent now. Rumors travel faster than Captain Trips itself. Some speak of Russian plots. Others whisper about alien microbes or punishment from God. Behind him, aides wipe sweat from their foreheads, eyes darting to off-camera doctors shaking their heads. Windows glow in the evenings, then fade one by one, like candles going out in a cold wind. The country's great cities, once lit with neon and busy with life, become hushed, echoing tombs. As she falls sick, his guilt bubbles up, sharp and cutting. The mother he never managed to make proud slips away in his arms, leaving him alone with his regrets in an apartment that suddenly feels vast and empty. King doesn't show the pandemic in grand cinematic sweeps. He shows it in the hush of empty rooms, the slow collapse of everyday kindnesses, the quiet horror of realizing there are fewer and fewer lights on in the houses you pass. Somewhere, far from the cameras, bulldozers move earth over mass graves, while helicopters ferry bodies from hospitals to hold the dying. Civilization itself is slipping beneath the waves, and those who will inherit what's left are already dreaming of 2 figures. One, a kindly old woman singing hymns in a Nebraska cornfield. The other, a dark man who waits at the crossroads, smiling in the shadows. His wounds ache, but the silence that has always been his comfort now feels heavy, pressing, endless. When the sheriff brings him soup and a bandage, Nick sees fear dancing behind the old man's eyes, fear that this sickness will spare no one. The government issues calm statements over every channel, promising the sickness is contained, but people see the cracks. Neighbors who don't answer their doors, co-workers who disappear overnight, churches overflowing with desperate prayers. The security staff grows thinner each morning. The cafeteria food arrives, cold, delivered by silent men who hurry away. And each night, Stu dreams of cornfields, stretching endlessly under stars, and an old woman's voice calling him home. But he also sees a dark figure walking America's empty highways, a man with no face and the smile of a wolf. Heartbreaking portrait of people who had no idea the last normal day of their lives had already passed. A nurse in New York City wipes sweat from her brow, telling herself to finish one more shift before going home to rest. And generals lean over Stu Redmond's chart, whispering words like vector, immunity, and containment. Stu, alone in his sterilized room, feels the walls closing in. Franny Goldsmith tends to her father in Maine. She watches him waste away in his armchair, breath rattling, eyes sunken. refusing to let go of her hand even as fever takes him. Franny's grief is quiet, raw, and so human it feels like a memory of our own. She calls old friends and hears only hollow rings or disconnected tones. The world is shrinking around her. Street by empty street. Each day, more men in protective suits appear, their eyes shadowed and fearful, even as they take his vitals with gloved hands. They study him like a rare specimen. But their questions, how do you feel? Mr. Redmond, do you remember touching Campion? Tinged with desperation, a bus driver in Chicago collapses at the wheel, sending his vehicle careening through a red light. The passenger's startled cries blending with the rising whine of distant sirens. Mothers tend to sick children with cool claws and whispered fathers brew mugs of tea, believing tomorrow will be better. Radios hum with cheerful voices, even as their words become strained, hoarse, broken by coughing fits. Newscasters push through fever to keep reading the headlines, unaware that their final broadcasts are already being written. Through King's vignettes, we see ordinary people facing the first cruel signs that something is deeply wrong. In these small tragedies, King paints a mosaic of a nation on the cusp of collapse, each piece a quiet meanwhile. In the clinical, humming halls of the government's hidden medical centers, scientist Stu senses the truth, even before the nurses can hide it. Everyone around him is dying. King shows us that it isn't just a virus spreading its fear. In the flickering light of television sets, the president assures the nation that everything is under control. As days pass, entire towns become silent. Traffic jams stretch for miles, engines left running until they sputter out. Pets roam empty streets, searching for their owners. We return to our survivors, scattered across America, each living a small, personal story of loss. In New York City, Larry Underwood, a musician on the cusp of fame, finds his triumph soured by a mother whose disappointment has always weighed on him. And in Arkansas, Nick Andros, a deaf-mute drifter, wakes in a jail cell after a beating, unaware that the world outside is unraveling. Each of these threads tugs us deeper into the quiet heartbreak of a world falling apart. By the end of Chapter 7, the shape of things to come is clear. Captain Trips is not just a disease, it's a tide sweeping away everything familiar. The long night deepens. By now, most of America has fallen into Hoosh City streets, echo with wind instead of footsteps. Phone lines go dead, and television channels slip into static. But in the scattered pockets of survivors who remain, something begins to stir. The awareness that they are among the last, and the dreams that will begin to draw them, softly but relentlessly, to one of two destinies. Franny Goldsmith stands at the threshold of her childhood home in Ogun, Maine, feeling the oppressive quiet that follows her father's death. The halls are littered with silent bodies in white coats, their eyes glassy and unseeing. Franny, Larry, Nick, and Stu all begin to see her. Mother Abigail, a serene, ancient woman sitting in a rocking chair under a bright Nebraska sky, she calls them softly, with songs of faith and words of comfort, offering hope that a new community might rise from the ashes. Her cornfield is bathed in golden light, a place of peace that feels like the memory of home itself. Television studios go dark, mid-broad, hospitals become silent charnel houses, military bases fall into chaos, soldiers fighting each other for scraps of supplies before turning on themselves. The government's final, desperate orders die on the lips of men too sick to stand. Across highways and rural roads, countless cars sit at odd angles, windows fogged from within, their occupants long dead. King describes the eerie contrast of clinical sterility and creeping death. Flickering fluorescent lights, medical equipment humming aimlessly, an occasional distant crash as something topples in an empty corridor. Morning routines, city lights can vanish like mist in the sun. And yet, even as despair seems to settle like a blanket, the dreams persist, pulling the survivors toward each other across the silent miles. Stu senses that the government's plan to contain the virus has collapsed entirely. We know the survivors are moving, drawn by forces greater than themselves. Some seek the gentle hand of Mother Abigail. Others are lured by the dark promises of Randall Flagg. The roads are empty, the sky is vast, and the stakes quietly enormous. Alone, he plans his escape, even as he wonders whether he is truly the last immune person alive. The rooms that once echoed with his voice are still filled only with a soft ticking of clocks. King shows us how the grandeur of Manhattan, the neon signs, the towers of glass and steel turns monstrous when stripped of people. His boots crunch on gravel as he moves from ghost town to ghost town, gathering shadows to him like a cloak. His name is Randall Flagg, and he promises power, revenge, and freedom from the old rules. His presence in dreams leaves the survivors shivering as they wake. Trash spills across avenues. Cars sit abandoned with doors ajar. Dogs bark in alleys, with no owners to call them home. In these chapters, King gives us glimpses of how loneliness becomes something else, something alive, with purpose. Franny decides to leave her empty town rather than waste away in it. Larry chooses to face his fears, driven by dreams of a woman who might guide him. Nick writes notes to himself, plotting his path toward the mysterious place. It feels like a beacon in his mind. Larry's initial shock gives way to grim determination. His journey becomes an odyssey of survival. He raids empty stores for food and supplies, avoids packs of feral dogs, and learns to sleep with one eye open. His mother's death has left him hollow, but his instinct to keep moving becomes a lifeline. She moves from room to room like a ghost, making lists of what food remains, wondering if she will ever speak to another living person again. He leaves the small-town jail where he'd been cared for by Sheriff Bakura, good man who soon succumbs to the plague. Nick tries to write letters, but there is no one left to read them. He buries the sheriff with quiet respect, then sets off alone through the empty roads, aware of how even his deafness cannot shield him from the strange hush that has settled over the world. King paints Franny's loneliness with tender detail. The empty hum of the refrigerator, the worn grooves of the kitchen floor, the way a house can feel like a coffin when there is no one left to share it. In New York City, Larry Underwood tries to navigate the sprawling labyrinth of deserted streets. In Arkansas, Nick Andros, his face still bruised, wakes in a world grown so quiet it makes even his own lifelong silence feel different. In Vermont, Stu Redmond finds himself increasingly isolated at the Stovington facility, and far beyond the empty towns. The first threads of something older and more mysterious begin to weave themselves into the dreams of the survivors. But there is another dream, colder and darker, whispering to them from the edges of sleep. A dark man who walks deserted highways with a hungry smile. As our characters set out, some on foot, others in stolen cars, they begin to sense they are not merely drifting. They are being called. Meanwhile, in places the characters will not see, we witness the rapid collapse of the old world's last institutions. King fills these chapters with moments of quiet heartbreak. A family's uncollected mail spilling onto a porch. A child's bicycle lying tipped on a suburban lawn. The sense that the familiar things we count on neighbors by the end of chapter 11. There is a feeling of slow gathering, a hush before a meeting, a collective breath before the next chapter of the world's story begins. The roads stretch on, long and empty, weaving together the paths of strangers destined to become companions. These chapters bring the first quiet convergences, where loneliness gives way to tentative trust, and small bands of the immune begin to form under the vast, indifferent sky. His time in captivity has left him wary, but determined. Glenn sits in his yard, painting with his Irish setter, Kojak, at his side, accepting the world's end with a philosopher's calm curiosity. He welcomes Stu with a shared meal and conversation that flows like water over stonestalk, of how civilizations fall, of whether human nature can build something better in the ruins. They flee the city together in a scene both claustrophobic and cinematic. The Lincoln Tunnel, dark and choked with wrecked cars, becomes a maze of shadow and death. As they crawl over shattered glass and cold the road is lined with cars rusting in the summer heat, birds perched on mirrors, weeds growing through cracked pavement. Rita, unable to bear the weight of this new world, overdoses on sleeping pills one quiet night, leaving Larry to bury her beside the road. In his grief, he feels unmoved. Dreams grow more vivid. Mother Abigail, her voice rising in him, beckons them to Hemingford Home, Nebraska. She becomes a symbol of light and unity, her cornfields glowing with a gentle, golden luminescence that promises safety and love. In the same sleep, they see Flag standing at the crossroads, his eyes dark, his grin wide, offering power without mercy. The tunnel feels alive with quiet menace, each echo a reminder of the world's collapse. These small moments make the survivors' journeys feel intimate and achingly real. From different corners of the country, souls drawn by hope and dread move along empty highways, pulled by dreams older and deeper than memory. Some will find the warmth of a new community. Others will feed the dark man's hunger. The stand has begun not in battles or grand speeches, but in the quiet choice of whether to walk toward light or shadow. Though civilization has collapsed, their need for each other and for something greater than themselves grows stronger with every mile. Tom's kindness fills Nick's days with warmth. They build a silent but profound friendship, one that speaks through smiles, shared chores, and notes scribbled on scraps of paper. Tom repeats a Moan that spells moon with innocent joy, a phrase that becomes an unexpected comfort for both. Their journey feels like a pilgrimage, each step taking them closer to the dreams of Mother Abigail and the promise of a new beginning. Emerging into the open air, Larry and Rita breathe deeply, but the trauma lingers like a cold fog. King shows glimpses of Flock's growing kingdom. A drifter named Lloyd, trapped in a Las Vegas prison cell with only rats and darkness for company, begins dreaming of a man who offers freedom and power. Flag appears to Lloyd as a savior, unlocking his cell with a smile that promises the world. In these scenes, King paints Flag as both magnetic and monstrous, his presence a storm cloud on the horizon of the survivors' fragile hope. It's the first time Stu feels companionship since the world ended, and the ease of their connection becomes a quiet balm against the loneliness. He walks and hitches, rides, moving south through small towns, where the silence rings in his ears like a bell. King describes with aching clarity how every step feels, both freeing and terrifying. Fields of waving grass hide cars abandoned mid-grocery stores stand open to the breeze, shelves ransacked or untouched. Yet through the desolation, Stu feels a pool of dream of an old woman waiting in a cornfield. Her voice as warm as a hearth fire. We first find Stu Redman, alone after escaping the dead halls of the Stovington facility. As he travels, Stu encounters Glenn Bateman, a former sociology professor with a sharp wit and an easy laugh. Far away, in Ogunquit, Franny Goldsmith finally leaves her childhood home. She buries her father with tears and trembling hands, writes a note on the kitchen table in case anyone comes looking, and sets off on foot, determined to live. She soon meets Harold Lauder, a teenage outcast who has carried a secret, crushing love for her since high school. King captures Harold's awkward desperation. He tries to appear heroic, but cannot hide the bitterness in his heart, a resentment that grows sharper each time he sees Franny's grief or her independent strength. Yet together, they travel, because in this new world, loneliness can be more dangerous than any sickness. Larry Underwood's story moves through the empty canyons of Manhattan, where he meets Rita Blakemore, a wealthy older woman who has survived by luck and a grim will to live. Their journey beyond the city is slow, burdened by Rita's fragile state of mind. Nick Andros' path takes him through Arkansas and into Oklahoma, where he meets Tom Cullen, a large, gentle man with intellectual disabilities and a heart. Meanwhile, the dark figure in the dream's Randall Flagg moves through the abandoned places of America, gathering followers drawn to his ruthless charisma. As these chapters unfold, the survivors' paths begin to bend toward one another like rivers joining. King's genius lies in the quiet details. The way a lone guitar chord echoes in a silent valley, the flutter of curtains in an empty farmhouse, the smell of rain on hot pavement. By the end of chapter 16, the Great Migration is underway. The lonely roads of America begin to feel less empty as the immune wanderers converge, pulled by dreams of Mother Abigail's warm voice or the cold, thrilling promises of a dark man. These chapters mark the heart of the Gatheranga, time of meeting, of tentative trust, of first bonds forming under skies silent with loss. Nick Andros and Tom Cullen continue westward together, an odd but beautiful pair. Their friendship grows like a seedling in barren soil, giving each day a reason to keep moving. Nick learns Tom's rhythms, the way he repeats phrases, the shy smiles he gives when praised, the wonder in his eyes when they share simple pleasures like cool water from a well or the stars sprawling across a night sky. Her dreams are not just calls anymore, but conversations. She warns them of the dark man and urges them to hurry. Her voice wraps them like a grandmother's blanket, full of love and worry and terror. Flag's eyes shine with a hungry light as he promises a world free from rules or mercy. He laughs easily, moves with eerie grace, and when he passes, dogs whimper and birds fall silent. In one dream, she sings gospel songs under a sky bright with stars, the words echoing long after the dream fades. The survivors are still few and far between, but each meeting feels like a miracle, proof that humanity might yet stitch itself back together. Each survivor wakes with her hymn on their lips, feeling less alone. She knows flocks. Power gathers like a storm. She knows each soul, traveling her way, carries within it the seed of the world to come. Whether it will bloom with love or rot in hate depends on the choices soon to be made. The safety of sleeping near others who watch the night. The soft comfort of knowing someone will miss you if you don't wake up. Yet there is also a growing sense of dread. Each survivor feels the dark man's approach in their dreams. His promises, his threats. Together, they start moving more purposefully toward the dream of Hemingford home, the place where Mother Abigail waits. They travel through towns where silence lies thick, but in each other they find laughter and light. Even when the world is dark, we see him in glimpses, traveling roads, like a shadow with a face. He appears to desperate survivors and offers them twisted bargains, promising safety or power in exchange for loyalty. His travels take him to places where evil has always simmered, abandoned slaughterhouses, burned-out churches, lonely crossroads. His army grows quietly. Criminals, outcasts, the violent, and the lost. Lloyd Henride, rescued from prison by Flag, becomes his right hand, eager to serve the dark man's vision of a new order ruled by fear. Stu Redman and Glenn Bateman deepen their friendship as they head west, gathering knowledge and small comforts along the way. Glenn muses on how quickly civilization fell, his voice lilting with both fascination and sadness. A kind Oklahoma farmer with a heart big as the plains, and Susan Stern, a practical nurse who has kept her hope alive. They join forces, their group feeling for the first time like a family in the making. Campfires glow at night as they share stories, laughter rising softly into the dark, and the ache of what's been lost. Harold, meanwhile, struggles with dark jealousy as he realizes Franny's affections drift increasingly toward thoughts of Stu, whom they have not yet met but know of through their dreams. Harold tries to impress Franny with survival skills and forced cheer, but beneath his attempts simmers resentment. King paints Harold with painful nuance, a boy desperate to be a hero, but twisted by his own insecurities into something brittle and dangerous. He speaks of sociology, of the patterns of history, of whether humans are destined to repeat the same mistakes. Stu listens, appreciating Glenn's mind as much as his company. Together they find signs of other travelers' fresh tire tracks, campfires still warm, signs that others also follow the call. Franny and Harold continue their uneasy alliance. Franny grieves quietly, her eyes hollow, her thoughts filled with her father's voice. Larry Underwood, trudging west from the ruins of New York, encounters Lucy Swan, a strong, kind woman who lost her child to the plague. Lucy's grief matches Larry's own pain over Rita's death, and together they find tentative hope. Their partnership feels fragile, but genuine, each step a quiet testament to how shared sorrow can begin to heal. They pass through towns littered with reminders of the old world, abandoned swimming pools, dusty diners, playgrounds where swings still sway in the breezing king's descriptions are so tender, they feel like memories half forgotten in dreams. As the travelers continue to move west, Mother Abigail's presence grows stronger in their sleep. But the dark man, Randall Flagg, also works his will. King gives chilling portraits of flocks recruiting. People kneel before him in the night, trembling with awe. Meanwhile, as Nick and Tom near Nebraska, they encounter others drawn by Mother Abigail's call. Ralph, Brentner, Franny, and Harold to meet other travelers. Dana Jurgens, a tough, independent woman whose sharp eyes miss nothing, and Judge Ferris, an old man with a mind still sharp as a knife. As the separate groups slowly find each other, the novel's mood shifts from isolated despair to cautious community. King's writing glows in these chapters with the quiet joys of newfound companionship, the warmth of shared meals cooked over small fires, and high above it all, in her little house, surrounded by cornfields, Mother Abigail prays for them. She knows time grows short. The endless roads begin to empty of travelers as the survivors draw together, crossing fields and highways toward a single point on the map, Hemingford home, Nebraska. Here, the promise of reunion and purpose stirs hearts dulled by grief, and Mother Abigail wise and ageless waits to greet those who will carry the fragile hope of a new world. The first to arrive is Nick Andres, along with Tom Cullen and their new companions, Ralph and Susan. When they walk into Hemingford home, the quiet town feels like a pocket of another world. Rows of neat white houses, with front porches, lilacs blooming despite the death that sweeps the country, a sense of waiting hanging in the warm summer air. Their meeting is awkward at first, strangers still wary of each other. But soon, shared stories and the simple joy of seeing new faces smooth away suspicion. She recognizes each soul with a kind of certainty that goes deeper than sight. Her words stir something in them, faith in a future beyond survival. But she also warns of the dark man gathering strength in the West. She tells them of Randall Flagg's growing army in Las Vegas, of his lies, of his hunger for power. They agree to follow Mother Abigail's guidance and leave Nebraska for Boulder, Colorado, a place with fresh water, fertile ground, and shelter enough for many. Glenn proposes they call it the Free Zone, where they can rebuild with justice and kindness. How children who've lost everything chase fireflies in the twilight. The hush of prayers offered under a sky so wide it seems endless. The last sunrise over Mother Abigail's fields paints the sky in colors, both beautiful and foreboding. The Free Zone awaits, and with it, the fragile hope of a new society of they can stay strong, stay united, and resist the dark call of the man who watches from the west. Yet each quiet joy is tinged with a sense of gathering storm. Mother Abigail's warnings echo in every heart, a reminder that peace will not come. Plans form slowly. What vehicles to take, who will scout ahead, how they will bury the last of the dead along the way. Her voice is steady but heavy with sorrow as she describes the trials to come. She blesses them, praying over them with words that tremble with power and ancient love. Lloyd Henride becomes his eager lieutenant, helping organize scavenging parties, enforcing Flock's cruel rule, and gathering anyone willing to kneel. The trashcan man, wild-eyed and scarred, drifts in from the ruins of the Midwest, burning what he finds, seeing visions of Flock's face in every flame. Flagg welcomes him like a favored child, whispering that there is a special place for him in the world to come. Her farmhouse becomes the beating heart of their new beginning. The survivors gather food, patch roofs, mend fences, small acts of purpose that breathe life into their weary bodies. Around their fires, King shows the beginnings of true community. Meals cooked together, laughter over old jokes, stories of what they've seen. Glenn predicts that civilization must rebuild slowly from simple bonds like these. Nick writes notes passed around the circle, his silence lending weight to every word. The group's conversations drift between what they lost and what they still might find, weaving a fragile tapestry of shared hope. Nadine Cross, a teacher traveling alone, reaches the outskirts of him. She carries a secret darkness dreams of flag S, cold blue eyes, and the promise that she is his chosen bride. She arrives at the farmhouse weary and lost, welcomed by Mother Abigail's kindness, but hiding the shadows in her heart. Franny feels a spark of relief and recognition the moment she sees Stu. Harold notices this, and something inside him clenches tight. His polite smile masks a growing darkness. King describes how the scent of fresh grass and warm earth offers a balm for travelers who have trudged miles of silence and fear. They find Mother Abigail in her farmhouse outside town, sitting in her rocker on the porch beneath the bright Nebraska sky. Her face is lined like an old riverbed, her eyes alive with both kindness and a fierce light. When she sees them, she laughs, a deep, musical laugh, and it feels like coming home. She welcomes each with a hug that smells of soap and cornbread, calling them by name though they have never met. Her faith fills the air around her, warm and heavy like a summer evening. Stu and Glenn's group, traveling from the east, finally crosses paths with Franny and Harold's. Together, they push on to Nebraska, camping under a sky brimming with stars. When they arrive at Hemingford home, Mother Abigail is waiting for them, arms wide. Mother Abigail begins to speak of God's plan and how they are chosen to lead the world into a new age of light. Meanwhile, in brief glimpses, King shows us Flock's own congregation rising in the neon wasteland of Las Vegas. Back in Hemingford, the survivors hold a council to decide what comes next. Tensions begin to simmer quietly. Harold's smiles grow tighter as he watches Franny and Stu grow close. In private, he nurses his wounds with bitter fantasies of revenge. King S. writing in these chapters shimmers with moments of delicate grace. The way the survivors share music played on a rescued guitar. As these chapters close, the band of survivors prepares to leave Hemingford for Boulder. The survivors, bound now by the warmth of newfound fellowship, gather themselves for the next leg of their journey. They leave the quiet fields of Hemingford home behind, caravanning west across the great, empty plains toward Boulder. Stragglers emerge from the wreckage of towns, men and women who had been surviving alone, drawn by the same dreams of an old woman singing hymns in Nebraska, or speaking softly of Boulder, Colorado. Each new face adds to the sense of fragile hope and to the tension of whether they can truly forge something new. From the ashes of the old world, their path is a ribbon of highways littered with abandoned cars, quiet rest stops, and skies so wide they make even the largest heart feel small. They spread out through the city's neighborhoods, reclaiming homes and gathering supplies. She feels Flock's presence like a cold hand on her shoulder, his voice whispering that she is meant for him alone. She tries to find peace in Boulder's warmth, but cannot shake the sense of being owned by something monstrous. She sees pride blossoming among the council members, a dangerous confidence that hints at humanity's old flaws. Lloyd Henride oversees the building of gallows, the clearing of streets, the gathering of weapons. Flock's people build an army with frightening speed, bound together by terror and Flock's supernatural charisma. He gives us small, lovely moments. Franny planting flowers outside her new home. Glenn smoking a pipe on his porch as he watches the mountains. Nick and Tom sharing a sunset on a rooftop while letting the shadow of Flag creep closer, as sure and silent as nightfall. The Trashkin Man, drawn like a moth to Flock's dark flame, becomes obsessed with fire and destruction, setting blazes across the desert. They have built something worth fighting for, but the question that hangs over every heart, whether they will have the courage to face the darkness coming for them. Flag, in return, watches the free zone through dark dreams and crow-rimmed visions, plotting how and when to strike. She begins to fear that they have begun to trust themselves more than God's will. One morning, she rises before dawn and slips away from Boulder, leaving only a note behind. She walks into the wilderness, determined to pray alone until God speaks to her heart again. Her disappearance shakes the council and the community. Fear and uncertainty ripple through the free zone. made worse by whispers that Flag grows stronger each day in Las Vegas. Her restlessness grows each night, her eyes haunted even in moments of quiet. There's an odd comfort in restoring light and water to empty houses, a sense of purpose that lets their weary minds rest. The free zone begins to resemble a true community, fragile but real. Franny finds safety in Stu's quiet steadiness. Stu finds light in Franny's resilience. Yet Harold watches from the shadows, his heart souring with jealousy. In the quiet of their meetings, they weigh whether they must act first or wait for the dark man to move. Suspicion becomes a slow poison among them, making every glance feel heavy with unspoken dread. His journal becomes his refuge, a dark place where he writes venomous thoughts about those he feels have wronged him, thoughts that begin to twist into plans. Electricity flickers back to life in parts of town, and each bulb glowing in the night feels like a tiny miracle. As they travel, the group continues to grow. When they arrive in Boulder, the survivors find a city sleeping under the summer sun, its streets silent, the Front Range Mountains standing watch like ancient guardians. Glenn Bateman proposes a council, and slowly, the Free Zone's government takes shape. King paints these moments with careful warmth. People sitting on folding chairs in a high school gym, arguing softly about rules, fairness, and how to rebuild without falling into the traps of the past. Nick Andros, with his fierce sense of justice and unwavering integrity, is appointed to the council alongside Glenn, Stu, Franny, and Ralph. Tom Cullen, though not on the council, becomes a beloved presence, helping wherever he can, with the strength and heart of a man who only sees the good in others. Stu and Franny grow close during these weeks in Boulder. Their love begins like a soft song, hesitant, tender, and deeply comforting. Meanwhile, Nadine Cross continues to wrestle with the dark promises in her dreams. King shows us how Boulder comes to life. Funeral brigades quietly laying the last of the plague as victims to rest. Children's laughter returning to empty playgrounds. Gardens sprouting in backyards. A radio station broadcasting again, sending a beacon of music and news into the silent distances. Yet even as these small wonders unfold, Mother Abigail grows uneasy. In Las Vegas, King shows Flock's domain coalescing into a cold, brutal order. The Boulder Council begins to suspect spies in their midst, growing suspicious of newcomers and fearing that Flock's hand may already reach into their fragile peace. King's writing in these chapters balances the tender rebirth of Boulder with the growing sense of doom. As these chapters close, the survivors feel both stronger and more vulnerable than ever before. The Free Zone continues to grow, day by day, life returning to Boulder like grass, pushing through cracks in pavement. More survivors arrive, each adding their own strengths and stories. King shows Harold's descent with painful intimacy. How every kind gesture toward Stu feels like a wound. How Franny's gentle smiles feel like cruel reminders of what he can't have. His journal fills with rage, each entry a seed of hate. They talk softly at first, voices low like conspirators, sharing their growing sense of alienation. When Nadine admits she is still a virgin saving herself for a destiny she cannot name, Harold has face lights with something hungry. Yet amid the unease, there are moments of quiet grace. Tom Cullen tending vegetable gardens with shy smiles. Lucy reading bedtime stories to orphans she has gathered into her care. He is greeted like a prodigal son by Flag, who pets his head like a favorite pet, whispering words of comfort and promises of fire yet to come. Harold constructs a bomb with chilling precision, his mind focused by hate, his hand steady. Nadine encourages him, whispering dark praise that makes his chest swell. They decide to place the bomb at a Council Medinga single, devastating blow to fracture the Free Zone's leadership and leave Boulder ripe for Flag's conquest. Each character stands at a crossroads, every choice carrying the weight of many lives, and always in the shadows. The dark man watches, smiling. Flock's army grows. Criminals, sadists, and the lost, all drawn by his dark magnetism. and Tom share a game of cards by lamplight. Glenn writes in his journal about humanity's last chance. Franny and Stu dream of the child they might raise in peace. The contrast between these tender moments and the storm gathering in Harold-esque garage gives the chapters a haunting, fragile beauty. Las Vegas becomes a place of harsh order. Executions for disobedience, crucifixions on the Strip, but also nights of raucous feasts and terrible celebrations. Stu holding Franny's hand under the stars, vowing softly that they will find a way through. Nadine offers herself to Harold, not from love, but as a dark transaction, a way to bind him to her. And to Flock's will, their union is desperate, joyless, cold a pact, sealed in bitterness. That night, something shifts inside both of them. Boulder's hope has gained two shadows. Her hair is wild, her eyes fierce with the light of visions. She calls the council together, begging them to remember God's purpose. She tells them they must stand strong against Flag, must send men west to face the Dark Man before he destroys what they've built. Her return brings relief and hope, but also sets in motion the fateful gathering where Harold S-Bomb will soon do its work. In the dark hours of the night, he rereads his words until they feel like truth. He dreams of Randall Flagg, who fans his anger with promises of power and revenge. Children's laughter begins to echo through the empty streets. People sit on porches as evening falls, sharing meals and quiet songs. For a time, it feels as if the worst might be behind them. Yet beneath the warmth of community, darkness stirs. Harold Lauder, increasingly isolated and bitter, sinks deeper into resentment. Nadine Cross, too, drifts further from the light. She cannot escape the sense that her destiny belongs not to Boulder's hopeful future, but to the Dark Man who calls to her across every sleeping hour. She feels his eyes in the shadows of her room, hears his voice in the wind rattling the windows. Some whisper that she has abandoned them. Others worry she might be dead. Stu urges patience. Glenn advises caution, but a quiet fear hangs over every conversation. What if the Dark Man strikes while they are leaderless? Nick tries to keep the council united, but the strain shows in the lines on his face. Even when she tries to cling to Boulder's warmth, it slips through her fingers like mist. In these chapters, King begins to weave the two most dangerous hearts in Boulder together. Nadine finds Harold alone one night, his face pale in the moonlight, his eyes shining with fury. Meanwhile, in the council meetings, tension grows over Mother Abigail's absence. King writes beautifully of how Boulder's fragile peace begins to fray around the edges. A fight breaks out at a community gathering. Rumors spread like wildfire, and trust becomes a brittle thing. Across the desert, Flock's power gathers. The trash can man returns to Las Vegas after a spree of destruction, filthy, exhausted, but triumphant. Back in Boulder, Harold and Nadine's plan, King paints these nights before the bomb with a heartbreaking softness. Nick, and then the night before the bomb is to go off. Mother Abigail returns exhausted, gaunt, but alive. King's prose hums with tension in these chapters, the lines between love and betrayal growing thin as spider silk. The free zone stirs with renewed hope when Mother Abigail returns. Though gaunt and weary, she carries an authority stronger than ever. Her voice, when she speaks to the council, is filled with a quiet power, and her eyes seem to burn with visions. She tells them that God has shown her what must be done. For men must journey west to face Randall Flagg directly, to stand as a living challenge against his darkness. Her words settle over Boulder like a hush before thunder. Stu lifts her, his hands trembling. Flames lick the sky as neighbors rush to help the wounded, the air thick with screams and the acrid stench of burning wood. King lingers in the aftermath. The silence after the blast, the dazed survivors staggering among debris, the terrible realization that the darkness they feared had come from within. She wanders through the desert until she feels Flagg's presence come upon her like a cold wind. In a surreal, dreamlike sequence, Flagg appears to her with eyes like deep wells of night. Each man accepts the task with quiet resolve. Stu kisses Franny's hair, promising to return. Tears fill her eyes but she does not beg him to stay. Some part of her knows this is what must be. They pass cars rusting on the roadside, fields slowly turning autumn gold, empty farmhouses sagging with loneliness. They share food and water, trade stories under the stars, and find moments of laughter that sound strangely bright in the quiet world. Lloyd grows more ruthless, enforcing Flock's brutal laws, and Flag himself begins to fray, his confidence cracking under the weight of fate. A sense of destiny grows with every mile, a feeling that something waits ahead, vast and final. But all feel pressing against their hearts like the promise of a storm. He claims her fully at last, a union as horrifying as it is inevitable. He rapes Nadine, and the experience shatters her mind. She is left semi-catatonic, a shell-bearing Flock's child, her eyes empty of everything but terror. But though darkness has already crept inside, Harold and Nadine have finished their work. She tells them that the bombing was allowed by God as a test, and a reminder. They must not rest in comfort but fulfill their purpose. She names the four who must go west: Stu Redman, Glenn Bateman, Larry Underwood, and Ralph Brentner. She says they must walk, unarmed, carrying only their faith. The bomb sits hidden in a closet near the meeting room, its ticking heart counting down to ruin. He rages at the news of Harold's death and Nadine's broken mind. His control slipping as fear whispers to him that the old woman's prophecy might be true. He doubles his efforts, sending patrols to catch the walkers, ordering spies to watch boldly. His nights are restless, filled with dreams of a glowing hand reaching down from the sky. There's a single, suspended moment, a sharp intake of breath before the explosion tears through the night. Friends gather to see them off. Hugs are given, words of love whispered. The men step onto the road west, their shadows long in the light of the rising sun. Behind them, Boulder watches, holding its breath. Fire and sound rip the building apart. Windows shatter, walls buckle, and the ground shakes with the fury of Harold's betrayal. The night air stings their faces as they flee Boulder's lights, yet their triumph unravels almost immediately. On a lonely mountain road, Harold loses control of the bike. It skids, crashes, and sends him tumbling. Nadine America soon hurt, but Harold's leg is shattered, the bone glistening pale through torn flesh, lying broken in the dirt. Harold faces his hate and sees it for what it is, a poison that has destroyed everything good inside him. Alone in the darkness, he writes an apology in his journal, acknowledging his crimes, then raises his gun and ends his own life. Nick and several others die instantly. Bodies lie crumpled in the dust and smoke. A cry of horror rises through the night. That night, the Free Zone gathers in the council house, a sense of unity filling the air. Nick Andros senses something wrong. He feels a vibration of doom humming under the surface of their meeting. He leaves his seat, searching the building with an urgency that quickens the heart. King's writing crackles with tension. As Nick discovers the bomb, Franny, though, outside the worst of the blast, falls and hits her head. Meanwhile, Harold and Nadine ride away on Harold's motorcycle. Nadine leaves him behind, numb and lost. Back in Boulder, the survivors gather by candlelight around Mother Abigail's bed. Her frail chest rises and falls, with labored breaths. Mother Abigail's words are gentle yet carry the weight of finality. She blesses them one by one, her thin hands trembling against their foreheads. King lingers on the morning of their departure. The four stand at the edge of town as dawn breaks gold and soft over the Rockies. Their walk begins with silence, each man lost in his thoughts. In Las Vegas, Flag feels them coming. King shows the darkness deepening in Flock's court. Trashcan Man, half-mad, scours the desert for weapons of unimaginable power. As these chapters close, the four men walk on, step by weary step, toward a destiny none fully understand. The road west stretches endlessly before Stu, Glenn, Larry, and Ralph. Each day, the air grows colder as summer fades into early autumn. King gives us quiet, beautiful moments of the men's journey. They sit together at twilight. Glenn wonders aloud whether humanity will repeat the same mistakes. Even if they defeat Flag, Glenn, Larry, and Ralph scrambled down to him. Yet even here, glimmers of hope remain. Kojak lying warm against him, the memory of Franny's laughter in his mind, the faint belief that God's plan may yet include him. They walk through vast deserts, where the air shimmers with heat and nights drop to freezing. King builds these scenes with haunting detail. The three men forced to their knees in the swirling dust of the desert night. Lloyd Henright's cold eyes as he recognizes them. The quiet resignation in Larry's face as they are bound and taken to the city. They see signs of Flock's people. Crucified bodies, lining highways, trucks, rumbling by with armed men. The dark eye of Flock's spies always seeming to follow them. His people cheer wildly, intoxicated by his promises of a new empire rising from the ashes. Flag sits enthroned above them, his eyes glowing with something inhuman, his voice echoing like thunder as he proclaims his dominion. Flag raises his hand, his dark magic gathering. Trash Can Man appears suddenly out of the desert, wild-eyed and burned, dragging a nuclear warhead behind him. Larry, Ralph, Lloyd, Trash Can Man, and every soul gathered in that place are swept into silence. King lingers on the image of the mushroom cloud rising over the empty desert, an awful and awe-inspiring final note to the Dark Man's reign. He offers it to Flag like a child bringing a toy to his father. He knows then that the sacrifice has been made, the prophecy fulfilled. He whispers a soft prayer of gratitude for his friends, his voice breaking in the stillness. King describes the moment with terrible beauty. The bombs, sleek, deadly presence, Trashkin's whispered apologies for past failures, Flock's triumphant laughter as he realizes he holds ultimate power. Yet they keep walking, unarmed and unbowed, each step a quiet defiance. Lloyd, torn between his loyalty to Flag and his discomfort at this cruelty, shoots Glenn on Flock's order. The shot rings out, sharp and final. The crowd roars approval, yet a tremor of unease ripples through them. They do what they can. Splint the leg, give him water, speak to him with soft words. But they know what this means. They cannot carry him. The prophecy is clear. They must continue alone. A glowing hand of light, vast and ineffable, appears in the stormy sky above the gathered crowd. King calls it the hand of God, a vision of divine judgment. The hand reaches down, touching the bomb. A flash of blinding white erupts, and in a roaring instant, everything is consumed. Stu begs them to leave him behind, promising he will try to survive. They leave him with food, water, and Kojak, the faithful dog who refuses to abandon Stu. The goodbye is quiet and devastating. Glenn clasps Stu's hand with tears in his eyes. Larry hugs him fiercely. Ralph simply rests his forehead against Stu's, unspoken words hanging heavy between them. Larry speaks of his past selfishness and the long, slow path to forgiveness. Ralph tells stories of his family with a gentle humor that lifts their spirits. Stu, ever the quiet anchor, holds their doubts together with a patient, steady presence, cooking cans of beans over small fires. They share stories of the lives they left behind. They watch coyotes slip like ghosts through the distant hills. The landscape grows wilder the further they walk. Endless plains give way to craggy and the road cracks underfoot, untended and lonely. Signs of the old world litter there. Path-abandoned cars, toppled fences, faded billboards whispering promises of things that no longer exist. The silence of America feels vast and heavy. Along the way, their conversations turn more introspective, but tragedy soon strikes. In the mountains of Utah, Stu slips on a patch of loose gravel and falls into a dry ravine. His leg snaps with a terrible crack. King writes of Stu's loneliness with aching tenderness, the endless hours of pain, the nights when wolves howl beyond the firelight, the worry that each breath might be his last. Meanwhile, Glenn, Larry, and Ralph push onward. The terrain grows harsher as they near Nevada. As they reach the outskirts of Las Vegas, they are captured by Flock's patrols. In Las Vegas, Flag gathers his entire following in the center of the city for a spectacle of power. The prisoners are brought forward. Glenn, ever the philosopher, refuses to kneel, meeting Flock's fury with a calm, almost amused defiance. Larry and Ralph stand next, bound and waiting. But in that same instant, something shifts. The dark man's magic falters. The air ripples with a strange, holy presence. Las Vegas vanishes in a ball of light and fire. Flock's empire crumbles in a heartbeat, far away. Stu sees the light of the distant explosion from his place among the rocks. After the light of Las Vegas's destruction fades, silence returns to the wasteland. Far away, among the rocks of Utah, Stu Redmond lies, weak but alive. Night after night, he drifts in and out of fevered dreams. Kojak never leaves his side, the dog's warm body a lifeline against the chill. The days blur together, and Stu begins to believe he will die alone under the vast, uncaring sky. But one night, a light comes into Stu's darkness. Tom Cullen arrives. Franny runs to Stu, their embrace fierce with relief and love. The people gather, cheering through tears. It feels like the first true moment of healing since the plague began. They pack a truck and drive east toward Maine, seeking a quieter life, away from the gathering crowds and the first stirrings of new politics. Their journey feels both like an ending and a beginning. The road ahead empty and wide, the future unwritten, guided by dreams of Nick Andros' whispering instructions. Thomas found Stu, a man who calls himself Russell Faraday, awakens among a tribe untouched by the old world's plague. But even so, the story leaves us with a fragile hope that courage and love can still rise, even in the world's darkest hours. He stands tall, his eyes glittering with dark cunning. He speaks words of power, rallying these simple people around him. It is a meditation on the deep choices we make when nothing is left but the beating of our hearts. Do we reach for love or give in to hate? Do we rebuild or destroy? Randall Flagg has survived. The circle begins anew. The novel's sprawling tapestry shows how easily fear can breed cruelty, and how a single act of kindness can ripple out to change the world. He cooks food, keeps watch, and sings quietly to keep fear at bay, that we might remember every life is a stand-one we make, quietly or boldly, in moments big and small. Slowly, life returns to Stu's pale face. They spend long weeks moving carefully back toward Boulder, sharing stories and comforting each other under wide, starry skies. King writes this reunion with a heart-lifting tenderness. Tom's tears of joy, Kojak's ecstatic barks, Stu's voice cracking with disbelief and gratitude. Nick's presence lingers like a blessing, his love carrying Tom across hundreds of dangerous miles. Families plant gardens and laugh in the warm Colorado afternoons. Yet even in this fragile peace, unease lingers. Glenn's journals remind them that power and pride could grow again. Mother Abigail's words echo that good and evil will always circle each other. Stu and Franny talk often of the possibility that humanity will make the same mistakes once more. Tom tends Stu's festering leg with antibiotics scavenged from the ruins of the world. Back in Boulder, Franny is given birth to a baby boy named Peter at first. The child grows pale and feverish, the superflu stirring one last time. Franny stays at his bedside, singing lullabies through her tears. The people of Boulder wait breathlessly, for the baby represents everything. The hope that life can truly begin again. Then, one morning, Franny wakes to find her son's fever broken. His cheeks are rosy, his tiny breath steady. King's prose glows with quiet triumph as Franny and the others realize Peter has survived. The new world can begin. When Stu and Tom finally stagger into Boulder, their return is like sunrise breaking over a long, dark night. Over the following months, Boulder slowly rebuilds. Electricity hums again. Schools open. In the final days before winter, Franny and Stu decide to leave Boulder. In the epilogue of the complete edition, King takes us far away to a humid jungle in the southern hemisphere. King closes his epic with a haunting truth. The struggle between light and dark will never truly end. Final reflection softly now. Let us settle into the quiet aftermath of this long, harrowing journey. The Stand is a story of humanity laid bare, stripped of every convenience, every illusion, through Mother Abigail's steadfast faith and Flock's seductive darkness. Stephen King reminds us that good and evil are not distant forces but choices that live within us every day. At its heart, The Stand is a prayer for the future, that even when the old world falls away, we might still choose compassion, community, and forgiveness. And so, as your eyes grow heavy, may you carry with you the truth that hope can always be rebuilt, that love can rise again from ashes, and that the dawn waits patiently beyond every night. Sleep well, dear listener.